Good evening. This is the Coeur d'Alene Planning and Zoning Commission, and this is our May meeting. It's Tuesday, May 10th. Shannon, would you do the roll call, please?
Can't hear
Jordan?
you out there.
Here.
Fleming?
Here.
Ingalls?
Here.
Lutrip?
Here.
Messina?
Here.
Rumpler?
Here.
Ward.
Okay, thank you. Next, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so let's see. We next up have approval of minutes from the April 12th meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Second.
Okay, so motion by Lutrip and a second by Ingalls.
I want to, before you do that, I think we had a typo in, if I recall correctly.
I was just going to say, any discussion? So you see a typo?
Was there a typo in there? There was a Mr. Green. Okay. A keying error. So
Okay,
move
anything
approval
else?
for amending as commented on.
Second.
Okay, so the second concurs. Anything else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so the minutes are approved. Okay, next it's time for public comments. Now, this would be if there's a matter of a general nature that a member of the public wants to comment to us on. If you're here for the Belle Reeve hearing tonight, then there'll be time to testify on that later. Okay, seeing none, staff comments.
Good evening, Commissioners. I just want to give you an update on our vacation rental ordinance and where that is. So Sean Holm has been busy working on drafting an ordinance and has been getting some input from other departments, especially from the legal department, just to make sure that that'll have all the information we need and not cause any issues. We took into consideration what we heard from the opportunity at our last meeting to hear from the public, and we also met with representatives from VACASA, and they provided some input, and we kind of explained to them where we were going in terms of that light touch ordinance. So we will let you know as we proceed. It will not be on the next commission agenda for a public hearing. We'll need some more time to draft that, but we'll keep you posted. Secondly, the June meeting, we have several items. There will be a PUD amendment and subdivision request for Coeur d'Alene Place, an annexation of city-owned property, pocket housing subdivision request, and an interpretation of the downtown core zone. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Hillary. All right, next we have public hearing. This is the Belle Reeve HOA is the applicant. Location is Belle Reeve Lane. This is a proposed modification to the Belle Reeve PUD. This is quasi-judicial. This is PUD-1-04 M.5. Did I get all that? Okay, Tammy, welcome. It's all yours. You'll do the staff report for us.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Jordan.
Well, I guess, one thing I should have asked is if anyone had a conflict. I kind of skipped over that, but nobody jumped up. Okay. Excuse me for interrupting. Go ahead.
Right, no problem. Thank you. So the location of the property is plus or minus 24 acres between the former Burlington Northern Railroad and Spokane River in the Belle Reeve Planned Unit Development. So the decision point is that the Belle Reeve Homeowners Association is requesting a modification to the existing planned unit development known as the Belle Reeve PUD. So there are two changes that are proposed this evening. The first is to reduce the required open space from 18% to 10%. And the second request is to allow natural rock retaining walls within the 35-foot setback if they are located on private property, not located within Tract A, which is Belle Reeve First Edition Common area. So this is Riverwalk at Riverstone, the PUD master plan, which was approved in 2005. We currently know it as Belle Reeve. And I'll provide a little general information and history for you. The Bellarive PUD is largely built out. Land uses in the area include single-family and multifamily residential, commercial, and vacant land. There are some remaining open space areas that have not been completed to date. The original PUD was approved in 2005 with 18% open space. The project was called Riverstone Phase 2 Riverwalk and now commonly known as Bellarive. The most recent modification request came before the Planning Commission in December of 2015. On December 8th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing for a proposed PUD amendment and a subdivision in the Bellarive PUD, and the applicant for the subdivision was Riverwalk Townhomes, LLC. That request was denied without prejudice due to incomplete open space within that Bellarive PUD, and the staff was directed to work with the Bellarive HOA and work out a solution to complete that required open space. Riverwalk Townhomes, LLC appealed that Planning Commission decision, and that appeal went to City Council on February 2nd, 2016. The request was also denied without prejudice by the City Council, and their motion was to direct the Planning Commission to provide clarification on the definition of open space. So those two decisions precipitated the need for further input from the Planning Commission for the intent, functionality, and use of open space. So the Planning Commission provided input on staff's request for an interpretation at their meeting in February 2016. This application is a result of staff's work with the HOA to help them resolve the open space issue. So in this master plan shown and approved in 2005, there were a total of 412 units approved originally, and as you all know that as the economy changed and the market, things were revised and modified, replatted. And then on May 13, 2008, the Planning Commission approved a request for Bellarive's PUD to adjust the phasing boundaries and amend the conditions to address impacts created by the addition of the fourth phase. And that's what triggered the condition that asks that the open space area contained in future phase 4 must be platted and constructed within 2 years after final plat approval of phase 3, which is this area here on our map. So this is an aerial photo of the Bellarive PUD, and the solid red line encompasses the boundary of the Bellarive PUD. We have open space areas throughout the PUD that we've talked to a bit in the previous submittal. So finding B8A, the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. So the subject property is within the city limits of Coeur d'Alene, and it is designated as stable established Spokane River District. The subject property is in this area. And the section in your staff report talks about Spokane River District tomorrow on page 3. And the characteristics of the Spokane River District are all listed in your staff report on page 4. Finding B8B, the design and site planning is or is not compatible with the existing uses on the adjacent properties. So the project was approved as a mixed-use development, offering a mix of residential housing and some commercial uses. When that PUD was approved, the performance standards were modified. It's located in page 6, and I'll include a few of them. So Courtyard Homes was modified from a 45-foot height to 55 feet, and Boardwalk Homes was modified to a 35-foot height limit. The requirement for the PUD allowed a 35-foot frontage on that street side along Bellarive Lane. And then they also reduced the setback for the Courtyard Homes and Boardwalk Homes. A Boardwalk home has a 5-foot side yard setback on both sides, and the Courtyard Home provides for a 10-foot setback on both sides. It also reduced the setback along the Spokane River frontage, modified the shoreline regulations from 40 feet to 35 feet. The Bellarive Final Development Plan noted also that the Boardwalk Homes and Courtyard Homes were interchangeable. If this open space reduction is approved and modified, the condition to plat the required open space would be complete, which was condition number 9, which I mentioned earlier, and this PUD would become compliant. Finding B8C, the proposal is or is not compatible with natural features of the site and adjoining properties. A large portion of the Bellarive PUD has been built out, and the topography is relatively flat, which allows for the building pad sites, but it does slope along the Spokane River. I mentioned that second request from the Bellarive HOA. which is to allow natural retaining walls to be within that 35-foot area, that setback along private property, and not in Tract A, which is along that shoreline. So they've asked that a minimum of a 30-foot, or staff has asked that a minimum of a 30-foot from the Platte meander line, structural walls and other features would still be subject to the 35-foot setback requirement. There are some existing natural rock retaining walls that exist within the 30 feet of the Platte meander line currently, and there have been recent requests for the retaining walls within the setback. The modification would bring those walls into compliance, and the rocks would allow for some stabilization along that slope. B8D, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. So this finding was made in the original PUD with regard to the location, design, and size of the proposal and the ability for the city to provide services. So there aren't any other comments from other departments with regard to water, wastewater, fire, engineering under this finding, as they were already made in the earlier PUD. Finding B8E, the proposal does or does not provide adequate private common open space as determined by the Commission, no less than 10% of the gross land area, free of buildings, streets, driveways, or parking areas. The common open space shall be accessible to all users of the development and usable for open space and recreational purposes. I want to provide a little more detail on this one since this request deals with open space. So the Bella Reeve PUD is a total of 24.3 acres in size. The approved open space for the project was 4.42 acres, and it equated to the 18%. The zoning code requires a minimum of a 10% open space provided in a planned unit development. In the effort to bring the Bella Reeve PUD into compliance with the open space requirement, the Bella Reeve HOA has brought forward this request to reduce it to 10%. And they've also included details on how the remaining open space areas would be improved and completed per code. The Planning Commission directed staff to work with the Bella Reeve HOA on the open space issue at that December meeting, and staff suggested a possible reduction in the open space as a way to bring the project into compliance and come to a resolution on this. So the first request was to reduce it from 18 to 10%, and the applicant has proposed a required improvements to the common open space to be completed within 12 months of the recordation of Bella Reeve 6th edition preliminary plat, which is filed in conjunction with this proposal. And the other comment I'd like to make is that another consideration has been brought forward that Tract A, which is a private community garden of the proposed Bella Reeve 6th edition, is designated as private property and will be improved and maintained by the future owner of Bella Reeve 6th edition Lot 1. And the applicant has requested it remain private property for a future community garden. This area is not included in that required 10% open space. So this is a graphic showing the proposed open space, and staff has had a number of discussions with the applicants about this. So they intend to provide native grass areas along this area and this area. The Riverfront House Public Plaza area is considered to be open space. That's in front of La Peep. The public mooring area, and then along the boardwalk area. And then this portion here, which is going to be Tract B, also has included the required improvements to meet the code requirement and discussion per the Planning Commission's workshop on open space. So I've included a graphic. It's quite busy, but it will give you a little bit more details about Bella Reeve 6th edition tracts and easements. So this is the end of Bella Reeve Lane. This is Tract A, where the private community garden is proposed. This is a stormwater easement that's required, Tract D. This is the 10-foot non-exclusive temporary access easement for the public access to the river along Tract A, right here. And then there is also a requirement for a private driveway. And this is the area that will be improved. So the applicant has proposed that when the 8-foot wide boardwalk is extended on the Spokane River, the temporary public access easement along the north border of Bella Reeve 6th edition would be permanently vacated and eliminated. So the staff did provide, or just had some discussion with the applicant about providing an access easement around this area. There's existing easement there required right now for a fire hydrant, and we thought that would be a good place for connection for the public. So this is a site photo of the open space area along the property for Bella Reeve 6th Edition. This provides a little more detail about the open space along Bella Reeve 6th Edition. So they've proposed to install a community outlook in this area, a 4-foot wide walking path with decomposed granite that would take folks down to the water along there. They would install a gangway and boulders along the property line, and then there would be a future boardwalk. But the boardwalk calculation as far as that is not included in the open space requirement, because they can get to 10% without that. And this is another graphic showing you the area that would be improved in Bella Reeve 6th Edition. Finding B8F, or off-street parking. Off-street parking does or does not provide parking sufficient for all users of the development. So the standard parking requirements for the proposed PUD were approved as follows. Single-family dwelling units, 2 spaces per unit, and courtyard homes, 1.5 per unit. And the request of reduction to open space would not impact previously approved parking requirements, and they would be reviewed at the time of building permit submittal. The proposal does or does not provide for acceptable method for the perpetual maintenance of all common property. Bella Reeve HOA was part of the original approval and the final development plan. The applicant has noted in the narrative that all of the open space areas will be maintained by the HOA in accordance with the existing governance documents. I'm going to provide a little bit more information. I think I may have covered most of it, but also wanted to say, also noted in the narrative, that the applicant stated again that the boardwalk extension depicted in the plan is at the sole discretion of the HOA, and the applicant has agreed to put that in the future, and is dependent on obtaining an encroachment permit from the Idaho Department of Lands. The proposed boardwalk extension, again, is not included in that open space calculation. And Jim Brady with Idaho Department of Lands did get a mailing notice and was aware of the proposed PUD amendment. And he noted that if the request is approved, that they would need to get required permits from him. So there are 11 proposed conditions that you have probably looked at in your staff report for this modification of the PUD. Staff did make an amendment to condition number 3 after having some discussion with Mr. Williams. And I'll go ahead and read this out loud. A minimum 5-foot wide temporary public access trail using surface material accepted to the city shall be provided from the terminus of Bella Reeve Lane and connecting to Tract A, Bella Reeve 1st Edition, and Tract B of the future Bella Reeve 6th Edition prior to the recordation of the final plat or bonded for. Landscaping shall also be provided along the public access trail, and the trail shall be located within a 10-foot wide temporary public access easement shall be granted to the platting process. Once the boardwalk has been extended and connection made to Tract B of Bella Reeve 6th Edition, the temporary easement will revert back to the property owners. A 10-foot wide permanent public access easement shall be granted through the platting process to provide a connection from Bella Reeve Lane to the BLM property, and double-sided signage shall be installed to clearly indicate that the public can access the boardwalk and the Centennial Trail from this location. The location of the easement and signage shall be reviewed and approved by the city. So, action alternatives. The Planning Commission must consider the request and make appropriate findings to approve with additional conditions, deny or deny without prejudice. And the decision point again is the reduction in open space from the 18% that was originally approved to 10%, and which certain areas will be improved to meet our requirement. And then the other was to allow natural rock retaining walls within that 35-foot setback. Any questions for staff?
Okay, thank you, Tammy. Go
You're
ahead.
welcome.
Thanks, Tammy. I have a few.
Okay.
Take me back, if you could, big picture. Back, you said 2005 was when Bella Reeve was originally platted, correct?
That's correct.
And it was a different vision. You have it up right there where there's a lot more multifamily, if you will, condos and a lot more river house type stuff and whatnot. Help me understand, if you would, where did 18% come from? If other PUDs around town, the typical gated communities that we've had, Cottage Grove, Garden Grove, Meadow Ranch, and such, are 10%, and 10% is the presumptive standard. That's what's in our ordinance. Why did it ever get established at 18?
That was what the original developer, Marshall Chesron, offered through the PUD, and that's why it was approved that way.
So it was they were overachieving with a different vision.
Correct.
Of a whole different picture that you have there. Thank you for that. So
Yeah, this area, I believe, out here was depicted as an ice skating rink.
just wanted to, the city's ordinance didn't change somewhere along the line from 18 to 10 or something. It was 10% then.
That's correct.
They might have come in and said, hey, how about 10%? But again, it was a different vision with things more vertical, with more multi-family, if you will, type structures. With respect to this riparian strip and the boardwalk, there's an existing boardwalk?
The existing boardwalk along the Spokane River, yes.
That is something like 0.65 acres?
I believe that's correct.
Is that, are we considering that, it's floating in nature, it's not real property, if you will, I guess, it's not a tract or something, is that considerable as the public gets to use it and enjoy it, like the boardwalk around the marina out the window here? Does it have to be real property to be enjoyable open space?
Well, it is noted as public open space in the Bella Reeve final development plan. And I believe it was initially going to be along that shoreline in Tract A, but I don't believe it was, I guess, workable as far as getting that boardwalk there.
Another, related to that, sorry, one of the, I think arguments we'll hear is this strip of dirt that is next and parallel to the boardwalk. While it's not something that has picnic tables and cabanas and such, if it enables the usable floating amenity, should it be considered? I guess that's something that we'll look at there. But I guess I'm wondering, when we sat here and approved, Cottage Grove and Garden Grove and some of these recent ones, and they have a 100 by 200 open space, green space with a little tot thing, and a cabana, do we only look at the amenity, the tot lot and the cabana, 20 square feet here and 40 square feet there, or do we look at what enables those to be usable? And I think, so does every little piece of open space need to be some real high use, or is that bank and riparian thing, and should we consider that analogous to these other PUDs?
Well, after some discussion, even at our last meeting, the area along the bank has been landscaped, privately landscaped. So I believe we came to an agreement that that would not be factored in to the open space.
Would not?
Correct? Yep.
You see where I'm going with, kind of trying to draw a parallel to, old piece of grass, that has a couple of amenities on it. Are we just looking at the amenities, or, does the other part? So we'll dwell on that some more, I guess.
And I think talking about the original approval of 18%, that area that you're just mentioning along that shoreline factored into that, but because through time it was privately landscaped, we can't count that.
One more, if you could, and I'll pass. Kind of big picture here again. When we've done some other recent PUDs, this Garden Grove, I think it was called, up by Prairie Avenue, for example, that the applicant said, you know, here's the open space, it meets the 10%, it's all good. And, you know, somebody up here asked a question, is that open to the public? And really the answer was no. It's a little gated community, and by open space and enjoyed by public, it's the people that really live there. I'm not going to drive across town, jump the gate, and go in and enjoy the, you know, little green spot. So what's going back to 2005 with this, the original PUD? This one, is it because the comp plan really hammers on the public open space? How did it become, it seems like to me it's a higher standard. You know, it's not just 10%, but, you know, you bring the public in. I get to pedal my bike down there from my house and walk up and down the boardwalk. I don't get to go to Garden Grove, I think it was, and hang out at their gazebo. Why is that?
I didn't handle this item back in 2005, but I believe because it was going to be a mixed-use development, and they proposed that 18% open space, they wanted that public interaction and them to be able to use the amenities such as a boardwalk on the water.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Ingalls, may I clarify as well? The annexation agreement also spoke about the use of the open space for the public, and so that was a big part of it, as well as the applicant had proposed it to be open to the public versus some of the other PUD projects where it is private open space.
So there's a wrinkle of annexation, which is more of a negotiative type of.
If legal can weigh in, the ordinance says either public open space or reserved for the private, for the residents of the PUD.
Thank you.
And that would be 1707-235.
That's the ordinance specific to this, or the general ordinance?
No, to PUDs in general.
PUDs in general, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Are you done, Joe? Are you done? The annexation, did that speak to 18% open space?
I don't believe that spoke to the 18% in particular. It just spoke to trails and open space and other things.
So the riparian zone, was that required to be able to put in the dock?
I don't recall the history on that, how that.
It sounds like it was. I'm sure the applicant can clarify that because I know they were involved, John Magnuson.
So we now are not counting that as open space because it's landscaped.
Well, it didn't meet, as we had the commission denied without prejudice the application in December, and then we had the interpretation by the commission and talked about open space. The code speaks to the ability for open space to be usable and accessible to all users of the development. And so not only is it privately landscaped, but there's areas where you cannot, there's boulders, there's large shrubs, there's things where, in addition to the steeper slope, that it's not really usable and accessible. So it's not meeting that requirement, which is why staff had concerns with including that in that open space, since it's all supposed to be open for the public, per the approvals for this project.
So it was required for the dock along them, but it was not usable?
Correct. There's probably a few areas along there that could be usable, but most of it is not very usable, and it's not inviting to the public either, which was
So if
part of the challenge.
if this was somehow proclaimed open space in our formula, would we then become closer to 18%?
Yes, but again, how the project was approved with the 18% and that it was supposed to be usable and open to the public was the reason that it was determined to be non-compliant.
And if we don't approve this 10%, where does that put the development?
They would continue to be non-compliant.
And what does that mean?
Well, they would need to complete the remaining open space areas, improve them with landscaping and irrigation, and maintain them in order to become compliant. Otherwise, the code allows for the city to stop issuing building permits, which is not the desire of staff, and I'm sure the Bellerive community would like to continue building.
And there's some access to the river, a couple trails along there, do those remain open to the public to access to the docks?
Yes, so the application this evening is not saying to take away access, the public's access to any of the open space. It's more to reduce the improved open space from 18% to 10% so that they can come into compliance.
But those access points still exist?
Yes. And there's a requirement, one of the conditions is that they have to add signage, because that was one of the original, or one of the earlier PUD approvals, was that there's supposed to be signage to make it clear that the public is welcome to be on the boardwalk and on those pathways. And that has not been provided to date.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you.
Yeah, just to follow up that line of questioning, so what happens to the 8%? So what you just suggested is that there was open space that needed to be irrigated, improved, and so forth. So what's going to happen to that? So if we reduce from 18 to 10%, what then happens with the disposition of that 8%?
I would let the applicant answer that question, but I think the staff would think it would probably just remain as natural, unimproved open space or weed patch. But I'll let them speak to that.
Thank you.
Right. Any other questions of staff? All right. Thank you, Tammy. Okay. So on a quasi-judicial hearing like this, we'll have the applicant come up, and the applicant will have up to 30 minutes if they need it to make a presentation, and then we'll take testimony from the public, and there's some sign-up sheets in the back there on that red table there in the back. If you haven't signed up and you'd like to speak, feel free to go up there and do that. So who's representing the applicant? Mr. Magnuson. State your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. John Magnuson, 1250 Northwood Center Court, Coeur d'Alene. I'm here on behalf of the Belle Rive Homeowners Association, the applicant. I don't think...
And John, you swear the testimony you're giving us will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. It's all yours.
Thank you. I don't know that the association ever perceived that it was going to be the applicant in proceedings here, but maybe I can give you as much history as I can about how we got here and answer some of Mr. Engel's questions about the boardwalk. It appears this is kind of an example that has a lot of permutations of what went wrong with the real estate market, and the last man standing is the one with the perceived problem. And then the rest of us here who weren't parties to it tried to figure out what happened and why we're here. The association was contacted by the city in December, and that was in conjunction with Riverwalk's then application to develop what is the last parcel in the original PUD. And it was suggested to the HOA that there was an open space deficiency from the original approved 18%, and that there was a significant deficiency. And we scratched our heads and said, well, there'd been 5 plats approved within the PUD that again, the association had nothing to do with, and the open space requirement hadn't been brought to the fore, and nothing had really changed with respect to what we had observed and controlled on behalf of the HOA on the ground and in the development. And so how could it be, at least in our mind as we got here today, how could it be all of a sudden there's a problem today with this particular plat request and there hadn't been a problem with the previous 5? And I think a lot of it goes, this is just my opinion because again I wasn't a witness to history, but I was a witness to some of it as it transpired. I think a lot of it has to do with the riparian strip and what was proposed originally and how that came out. And why I know about that is this is now not a declarant-controlled homeowners association. It's controlled by the owners. And one of the first calls of duty that the homeowner control board had was to receive a violation notice from the Idaho Department of Lands. And it claimed that the boardwalk being built by the original developer and then transferred to the HOA as common area, and the boardwalk open to the public, that the developer hadn't built the boardwalk where the boardwalk was depicted and approved by the Idaho Department of Lands as being. And that's important because the original approval under the Department of Lands regulations gives the property owner X amount of square feet of dock or boardwalk for each running front foot of waterfront you have. And at that time, it was approved as a community dock, and it's 7 or 7.5, my memory escapes me on it now, but essentially, as the board and I dealt with the Department of Lands, we were shown schematics that showed the original boardwalk as being primarily, not exclusively, within and on ground within that riparian strip, on stilts, as you will, to a large degree, as opposed to what it is now, a floating boardwalk. And the department said you're in violation, and not only that, you've used up all your square feet because now you put it on the water, or you now own it and somebody else put it on the water and you have to deal with the problem. And you can't extend the boardwalk in a manner compliant with what was originally proposed as extending down the entire perimeter of the property. And so we worked that out, and we had the assistance of City Attorney Gridley and Mr. Tymason, who's kind of like your utility infielder. He gets involved in everything that doesn't seem to be, but he's very effective. And we got together cooperatively with the Department of Lands. We were able to get the permit amended to allow for the continued maintenance of the public boardwalk where it is now. We were able to get it approved as a non-commercial, non-navigational encroachment, which wasn't subject to the 7 or 7.5 square foot limitation. And we were able to utilize the rest of the frontage going down, including the frontage that's HOA common area in front of the Riverwalk proposed development, in order to bring the boardwalk into compliance. And we were also able to get direction from the Department of Lands that when that boardwalk is completed by whoever develops that, and now it's Riverwalk, that would be facilitated through an amendment to the permit, and it would all be copacetic and consistent with what the original developer told the city, albeit not entirely in the riparian zone. So it's a long trip through history as I learned it, but it gets back to how could you be non-compliant when we're coming in for the 6th plat, or Riverwalk is, and you weren't non-compliant in the other 5. The only conclusion I could reach is that through the change, and this isn't critical of staff, and through the change in staff, through the change in the parties, the proponents, the people who were there, at some point I think everybody operated under the belief that the riparian strip, which is necessary to maintain the boardwalk and was originally intended to house most of the boardwalk, was included in the open space. And the boardwalk was noted as 0.65 acres, the actual completed boardwalk, and the riparian strip is 3.182 acres, which comes up to 3.832, which is 0.6 of an acre less than the total required 18% open space. And that got into a discussion, well, is the open space, does every piece of it have to be open, and does it have to be open to whom, and discussions you've had. And I raised the point that, well, you can't have the boardwalk without the riparian strip. And had the boardwalk, one of the questions that the commission was asking is like, what happens if you have an open space facility that occupies less than all of the property? Had the boardwalk been constructed in the riparian strip, as was most of it originally intended, it's 8 feet wide, would that have made the entire riparian strip open space because it's bisected by an 8-foot strip or 8-foot deck? And does that matter now? Is it all not open space if the dock is put out in the water as opposed to on stilts? Those are interesting questions. I don't know how we got here, but the fact is, if they don't include that in the calculation, then it's not 18%. I don't know how it gets to 18% unless the owner of the last piece of property, Riverwalk, is basically probably going to have to, Mr. Williams is conversant with the calculations, they're going to have to devote some highly atypical amount of his property to open space, or this is modified to be compliant with city code through no fault of either the applicant for the 6th phase, the 6th edition, or the HOA, to be compliant with city code, and in fact, in recognition of what's really out there and on the ground. And, I'm sensitive to the fact that you have public comment, you have public concerns, there's people that live there, that people have investments, I get it. But what's really changing here in terms of where we're at today and where we're going? Not a lot. I mean, it is what it is. It has a public boardwalk. It has the public amenities that it has. It has the amenities open to the people in the development. What's really going to change from the HOA standpoint, if the commission approves this, is there is an incomplete portion of public or open space in the original platted area that needs to be landscaped by the HOA. That's it. The rest of the boardwalk is completed, not at the cost to the HOA. It's then given to the HOA. And then if Mr. Williams' Riverwalk's proposal is accepted, they have to complete the public or the open space requirements that are made part of that. So in terms of, is somebody coming in here and saying, we've, raped, pillaged, and plundered and made this more dense than was originally allowed, and we want to go from 18 to 10 at the instance of private gain? I mean, it looks like differing interpretations over what's open space, and the fact of the matter is nothing's really going to change, and it isn't going to cost the HOA anything, and the boardwalk will ultimately be completed in a manner that is consistent with what the original, at least in scope, maybe not where it's located, but it'll be consistent with what was originally told the city. So it's an odd position to be in, because usually people come in as an applicant and they have something positive to propose and they want to get approval, and it's kind of an unwilling applicant, because we didn't know we had a problem and life was great and we were just moseying along, and then we're told we had a problem, and so we had to resolve it. And then what happens if we don't resolve it? I guess if we don't resolve it, we still have our argument that the open space as interpreted through the approval of the 5 plats includes the riparian strip. We'd rather not go there. We'd rather get it done. I don't know what happens to the Riverwalk property. I mean, they can't go anywhere with that property. The thing gets stayed, and I don't know about the non-issuance of building permits and whether that stops. But it really seems to be, with all due respect, form over substance. And I think this is particularly true where the 10% is a standard in the code. And you could say, well, the original project developer came in here and said 18%. Yeah, he did. That's not us. We inherited the problem. It isn't a problem of our creation, but I think in fairness that there is room to see how we got here, perhaps, with that riparian strip. And it's a heck of an amenity to not only the people in the development, but the city, and it will be completed in a manner fairly consistent with what was originally thought out. So I guess I'd like to add one more thing. Mr. Ingalls asked a question about the dock being personal property and whether or not that can be included as open space, the dock itself. Well, the dock itself is personal property, but the right to use it is a real property interest that arises by virtue of a lease from the state over the submerged beds. So the right to use and occupy and place the personal property that facilitates public use is a real property interest. It's just that you have to walk on a dock that's personal property to do it, but you can't have the right without real property. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. I thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Magnuson, thank you. And I do have a couple questions. So,
Did you?
Again, as I understand, in looking at a finding that we get to wrestle with here related to the comp plan in this area emphasized that the river corridor area is an area that we are really pushing for public access and use. You just described the boardwalk, whether it's real property, personal property, floating, whatever. It would be perpetually the public's to enjoy, correct?
I believe that's a condition of the original PUD, and I don't question that.
So that's a good thing. Earlier I was I'd like to hear your perspective on kind of I'm going to say a systems view at what open space is, whether we're talking a little 200 by 200 grass strip in a gated community that we see all over town that we're considering open space. In that case, again, you have a tot lot here and a gazebo. but it's in a context of, a grassy area, and there's some boulders and a little waterfall, and I'm almost describing one that's a real example. And I think, the boulder area and some of this stuff, what does usable mean? I could go flip a coin in there and make a wish. Is that usable? Or, I'm enjoying that it looks nicer. And the grass and the area that those amenities live in, is that the same as looking at a riparian strip that's enabling the boardwalk? And so even though I'm not going to go up and set a blanket on the riparian strip, is it your argument that we should consider that riparian strip as enabling, just as the little grass and the boulder area I'm describing in a more traditional PUD that we see all the time? Should the riparian strip be usable open space, even though I don't have a picnic on it or something?
Well, I think the answer to your question is twofold. I think it's usable open space because it facilitates the placement of the boardwalk. And without the riparian strip, you can't have a boardwalk. And I think secondly, what is usable? Does usable mean, as you indicated, go lay down the blanket and have a picnic, or does usable mean you can look at an undisturbed strip of riparian property that, as you use a public resource like the boardwalk, and be happy that you're not looking into, somebody's living room, or at least have some buffer of some aspect of continuity of the natural environment as it's contiguous to the river. And in that instance, I don't think it's like a subset, if you will, of a conservation easement, which provides and protects and promotes public interest by leaving something open. It may not be utilizable for purposes of recreating and having a soccer match or a picnic or what have you, but it nonetheless confers a public benefit. Now, and I say that, in this instance, I think it's fairly unique where, but for the riparian rights, you can't have the dock. So it's not that someone is trying to take 30 feet of roughly inaccessible and maybe topographically challenged property and saying, we want that open space because it looks great and we don't have to do anything in it. I think they go hand in hand. And I got to believe that as this process through the city with multiple developers picking up pieces of property as the Great Depression rained on, that there were other people thinking that too, because this open space requirement of 18% wasn't really ever deemed, at least to our knowledge, to be in jeopardy or in peril until the last of the Mohicans was standing with the last piece of property to develop. But I think the proposal here today, and I have to compliment staff, that despite having our differing views of this, we've sat down and we've tried to collaboratively work out something that isn't asking for a special exception or dispensation. It's consistent with the code. It's in practical recognition of how we got here, and it's been a collaborative and cooperative process to try and say, how can we fix this and make this work? And it requires, Magnuson to say, well, the riparian strip is an open space. I really believe it's open space as this project developed, but it doesn't matter because we'll still satisfy the 10% without it.
Thank you.
Anything else?
So let's just say that we accept this 10%. Does the riparian strip then, can it be used for something else?
I think that with the alternative, could it be used for something else? It's HOA common area. I don't think you can build in it, though, under the original PUD approval, and it might be under the city code, but I'd have to defer to the staff. I don't think you can build in it.
So it wouldn't change?
It wouldn't change.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question for staff.
Okay.
I got a question for staff. I'm reading on page 2 here in PUD Open Space Amendment. It says in 2015, a change interpretation called the city to reject the platted open space. Can you tell me what happened in 2015 that it changed that? Do you see where I'm at, Hillary? It's in the applicant's narrative, and then it's page 2, first paragraph. Justification. It's the third line down.
I believe, so that John Williams is who had written this part of the justification on behalf of the HOA. So I think they were thinking that staff had a change in our interpretation of open space, which, as we discussed at the December public hearing and then in the interpretation discussion at the February meeting. So I think there is maybe a difference of opinion on what has happened in Belle Reve and what complies or what is really meeting the intent of the open space for that accessible and usable. There wasn't really, hasn't been a change in interpretation. I think there wasn't as much tracking as we had talked about before to see if the open space had been improved. It had been platted, but never had been landscaped or maintained or improved as was intended. And then there was also that condition number 9 that Tammy had mentioned earlier, that at the 4th phase, they were supposed to do the platting of that remaining open space and improve it, and that has not happened as well.
Okay, and if I'm getting this correctly, and I was here when the original PUD came about in the heyday when, you know, everything was going to be great, and I don't remember actually the 18% at that time. Was a long time ago, but granted 18% was what they said they were going to give, which was generous over the, I guess at that time, still 10% open space as an ordinance throughout the city. So we got approved and things changed. So it went through a whole bunch of other PUDs and nothing came up of open space at that time. PUDs, the lot size changed and things like that changed, but no open space came about. And then as we got down to the last portion of this property, if I remember a couple months ago, this came before us, and at that time open space came about because we're at the end where there's no more land left, and now we go, wait a minute, the whole thing isn't in compliance of 18%. We've got to change this somehow or do something. And I believe one of those reasons was because we didn't approve that applicant's application for that last section here. But 10% is the standard, 8% is what it is. We do have open space. I understand what's going on with the boardwalk, because that strip that we're talking about isn't really usable because it's on a slope. You've got a public boardwalk that butts up against private docks, basically, but the public could use it. And there are access points along that boardwalk to access, I guess, additional open space within the subdivision. So to summarize my thought, 10% is the standard. We're at 18% that was given way back when as a generous percentage in a PUD that was 11 years old that changed probably a half a dozen times already. Okay, I think I've got the picture.
I don't personally remember the 18%. The percentages kind of faded away. I have some distant memories of how rosy the future looked in Coeur d'Alene in 2005. I do remember the boardwalk on the stilts, though, along that riparian strip. And I think originally this development had something like 800 units in it, I think.
Oh,
it was pretty high density, so I'm not sure. Do you know when the dock, the floating dock went in? I don't know where the permanent walk on.
I think we dealt with that issue, and again, the more time goes by, the more I lose track of it, but I think we dealt with that issue in compliance with about 3 years ago, by 2013, and I think it was one of the first things that went in. I'd have to say like 2000, well, it probably was 2008, because there wasn't anybody doing a heck of a lot after that.
It was in the front of the large building where Lapita is, I think. That was the first. And then I know that Mort came in and wanted to plat all the lots that are there now, and that was kind of where the boardwalk, he had to complete that, which was in compliance to what was approved originally.
So he completed part of it.
He completed the rest of it that's there now.
And I'm not sure why it went to a floating dock instead of the one on pilings in the riparian strip.
I
don't know what
imagine it had
happened
something to
that,
do with the
but-
Department of Waterways and
Water
what
elevation.
was there and stuff.
Also the
It was
water
a
elevation.
surprise to the Department of Lands too, as we found out, but it's all fine now.
Yeah, I don't think they expected either, so I don't, everything kind of collapsed, and I don't know what happened in those certain years in there in between. So it is what it is now.
Yeah.
All right.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions for the applicant right now while he's up here?
Well, I think it was directed to ask the applicant about what is the plan for the 8% that's going to be essentially no longer considered in the open space calculation if we were to agree to this concept, and if it's just going to be just vacant space.
The riparian strip?
No, I think that if we're including the riparian strip in the calculation or not including,
We're not at
We're not.
10%.
we're not including it.
At 10%, it's excluded, and there's some specific areas that need to be landscaped and approved in a manner compliant with what the city wants.
Does the riparian strip essentially the difference between the 10 and the 18?
You know, the riparian strip, like I said, the riparian strip and the docks,
Half of it.
the riparian strip's just short of 3.2 acres. And with the docks, it's 3.83 acres in total, which is 0.6 acres short. And,
So it's close.
we could probably find that around PUD as it exists today. It might need some landscape finishing, but it's fairly close.
Yeah.
And Commissioners, if I can clarify as well, there's a triangular piece that I think is still owned by Treasuron. So that was one area that had been determined that couldn't be improved for open space with the HOA. And then one of the other areas is being proposed as that private community garden. So that would also come off the table for the 18%.
Okay. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, do we have a sign-up sheet? Thank you. Okay, so we'll do the public testimony now, and if you'd like to come up and testify, we'd be happy to hear from you. You can step up to the podium here and state your name and address for the record, then I'll briefly swear you in like I did the applicant. I have to do that since it's a quasi-judicial hearing. And I'll do the best I can with the names here. Okay, and I have Deborah and Gerald, is it Vernon? Have you in opposition? Would you like to testify still? Okay, come on up, please. Okay, just state your name.
Oh, Deborah Vernon, 1755 West Bell Reeve.
Okay, and you swear the testimony you're going to give us will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, and you have 5 minutes.
Mine is a concern because we're dropping our 18% by 80% to get to the 10%. And Misty Ingalls mentioned that in other green spaces, they're sometimes not really accessible to the public. And in our development, it is very accessible to the public because those of us that live there see the public there on a daily basis, particularly on the weekends. And on Bell Reeve, it's bumper-to-bumper cars that are parked along there using all these spaces. So it concerns me that even though it might seem generous to have 18%, if we reduce it by 10%, since we're allowing all the public to come in, unlike other developments where the public really doesn't go in and enjoy it, then that's putting an extra burden on the residents. I do want to submit a photograph that I have on my cell phone just showing you how much it is used, our area, by the public, and that a reduction is going to make it even more difficult on those that are residents. And then my other comment is that if we do give or reduce it to 10%, that 8%, is that going to be purchased by anybody, or is that money that's going to go back to those residents? Anyway, here's the photograph. May I approach?
You know, this is kind of new. We've had photos submitted, and they become part of the public record, but I've never had anyone hold a cell phone with a picture before, so I don't, yeah. Well, I understand that. We don't want to keep your cell phone for part of the record.
Let's take
No,
that
but maybe she could
evidence. She can email it.
email it to planning so that it can be part of the record.
Yeah.
That's people using Centennial Trail, the boardwalk.
Parked up.
We can't hear her. She needs to go to the podium, please.
Make certain I get my cell phone back.
It's on camera. You'll get it back. I'll bring it over to you.
Build some parking.
Well, that's not open space, is it?
Just press the lower button if
That's the
that's,
street.
Street.
Yeah,
That's
that's,
the
she's
street.
Yeah,
showing
that's
all the
in front of
cars
my
parking
house.
there.
That's how many people are,
That's not open space.
no.
and that's not unusual. It is that
Well, that's
busy
not
down there.
open- That's not open space.
No, but it's people using the open space. That boardwalk is pretty busy on the weekends in particular.
Okay. Well, the boardwalk's not going to go away.
No, but if we reduce it further still, and the public is using it, unlike, what is that, Cottage Grove, where it's a gated community, where they can say 10%, and the only people using it are the residents. But in our case, we're sharing it with all of Coeur d'Alene.
Okay.
Well, I'm kind of curious how reducing the requirement from 18 to 10% to make your development conforming is going to change the amount of use.
No, I'm not saying it's going to change the amount of use, but that extra percentage we're sharing with the public, whereas the 10% in Cottage Grove is not being shared with anybody but the residents. So maybe that was the initial reason as to why they put it
Oh, I see.
18%, because
The impact.
it's shared with the public. It's
the
not for
impact.
our benefit, it's for everybody's benefit. And with all the traffic down there using all the amenities, we need all that extra space.
Yeah, I don't know what his thinking was. I'd seen in other cases where Mr. Chesrone had, would take the frontage and then put some kind of a public walkway or boardwalk in like he did there. So I understand your problem with the usage there, and rightly or wrongly, that was dedicated to the public when he did that, so the
Maybe if we
boardwalk
could take
is
that
there.
8% and put it into a parking lot, then all those people that park along our private street can park there, and that would be better access.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, appreciate your comments, thank you. So, also, did Gerald want to speak, or?
No.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Stephen Nemeth?
Stephen or Stefan? Okay, 2060 Belle Reve Lane,
Number 207.
yeah, 207. Okay,
Now you can tell us
What
his
is that?
name.
it's a good thing she had glasses. Go ahead and state your name for the record.
Stephen Emick.
Okay, and you swear the testimony you're going to give us will be the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to testify in favor of the proposed amendment. I'm the president of the Belle Reve HOA. And essentially, I just think there's a lot of miscommunication and misunderstanding on what's happening with this open space based on the testimony of Mr. Magnuson. If you talk about that riparian strip, that's the majority of the open space issue that takes us from 10 to 18% or 18% to 10%, or very close. And so nothing's going to change with that land. We'll use it as we always have. So, in order to be compliant with the city, I think it makes perfect sense for us to reduce that requirement to 10%. And we don't have any other land that we can really do much with. There's no more land to build a parking lot or do anything with. So we're restricted in what we have now because the development has been built. So I would like to just be on the record as being in favor of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, let's see, I have Jan Jira? Gira? Okay. Have you, okay. Do you want me to put you down as neutral, in favor, opposed? Okay. Thank you. Okay, Daryl Foreman, don't wish to testify? No. Okay, I'm just neutral. Just checking to see if anyone changed their mind. And John Williams? John Williams? Yeah. In favor, do not wish to testify. Okay, thank you. And, let's see, is it Lou Chandler? Okay. Let's see, Matt Alton. Have you in opposition you'd like to testify? Okay, come on down. Just go ahead and state your name and address for the record there, please.
Matthew Alton, 1402 West Bella Reeve Lane.
Okay, sir, and you swear the testimony you're about to give us will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
We just all found out about this, or I did, when we got the notice that there was going to be a change in the PUD open space requirement. And it really comes down to a couple of issues, that we don't have a clear and concise definition of usable and open space. And I think that we need to have a clear-cut definition of that, so that moving forward, that these decisions wouldn't be so involved. It'd be concise. And that the issue that came about is the HOA got brought into this because a developer sold too much land, and then they tried to make it a higher density than what it was originally designed for, and then they're trying to fix it. And there's lots of fingers to point, but the reality is it's the homeowners that were part of the PUD that are suffering because they weren't able to receive any of the proceeds from the sale of that excess property, and we're stuck paying all the legal fees to deal with it. And it comes back to the city not having a concise definition of usable and open space, and allowing this subdivision to proceed to the point that they did sell at excess land and didn't allow for off-street parking during busy events, having it open to the public, and there's just not enough parking there. So that's just what I think that you should postpone making any decision until you have a clear and concise definition of usable and open space, and that needs to be, I think, from the city council, so you guys know how to act. That's all I got.
Okay. Any questions for this gentleman? All right. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Let's see. Ron Kincaid, I have you as neutral. Do not wish to testify. Okay. Linda Kincaid, do not wish to testify. Are you neutral like him? Okay. Let's see, Brenda Zerker. All right. In opposition, did you want to testify? I don't have either thing.
I don't want to testify, but this came about because we don't have any education about what is going on.
Okay. If there's anything you want to tell us, you're welcome to come up here. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot. We just legally have to have you speak into the microphone up there. So if there's anything you'd like to tell us, we'd be happy to hear it. Okay, great. Just state your name again for the record there.
Brenda Zerker.
And then you swear the testimony you're giving us will be the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, great.
Well, this is the first that we've heard about this, and so, I don't understand anything. I don't understand the section that they're talking about at the end. And, maybe the HOA could possibly have informed us so that we didn't come so uneducated. So anyway, that was my point.
Okay, thank you. All right, Nancy, is it Harvey? Okay, and I have you in opposition. Did you wish to testify? Okay. Then I have, is it William Borger?
I'd like to say a few words, thank you.
Sure, come on up. Just come on up and state your name and address for the record like the others did, and I'll swear you in briefly.
Hey, I'm Bill Borger from 1568 Belle Reve Lane.
Okay, sir, and you swear the testimony you're going to give us will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, so help me God.
Okay.
I would just like to say I would like to echo the sentiments of the last two people that spoke, because we just found out about this, and for us to try to come prepared to make an intelligent decision today is impossible. I can't hardly see that. I'm sitting at the corner. I would like to agree with Mr. Alton and the woman that spoke previously that this be postponed till the homeowners have the ability to digest and understand what this all means. Because I would like to state that none of us have a good idea of what this means to us as homeowners. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. And let's see, Van Sky, is this short for Teresa? TR? Oh, Terry, or Jim. I should look at who I'm talking to. It didn't look like a Jim. I'm sorry. I apologize for that, Jim. So let's see. I have you as neutral. Do not wish to testify. Did I say anything that caused you to want to testify or anything? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And John Butler, in favor, and I don't have whether you'd like to testify. Okay. Okay, so that's all that I have on the sheet. Is there anyone that would like to testify I didn't call? Okay, then John, you have some time for rebuttal.
Thank you, John Magnuson again. I'll be very brief. I'd just like to make a couple of points. Number one, I recognize that a couple of the residents asked for a deferral or continuance because they didn't have enough information. I think you probably, and with no disrespect to them, I think you probably hear that in about every public hearing you have. And I just say, what has the HOA done to involve its members? And that includes posting notices on the mailboxes, sending out an email blast to all those who furnish their email addresses. With this particular instance, I think public notice went out to the residents in the PUD. There was also public notice in December of the application which engendered this, which had no fault. I'm not casting blame, but had somebody come to the hearing then, they'd have been knowing what exactly was of concern to this commission. So it isn't a situation that nobody attempted to notify those with an interest. I don't know, short of knocking on doors, and given the political season, I think that people probably wouldn't want anybody else knocking on their doors. The second thing is there a clear and concise definition of open space? My colleagues over here, I think they're pretty certain they have one. We may disagree with it, but the fact of the matter is employing their definition and employing the minimum standard under the code, that this request brings compliance to the project. And again, we've gone through the history with no fault of the HOA. And lastly, the ironic thing about continuing this and not making the modification is that we have this amenity in the form of the boardwalk, and by not moving forward, the boardwalk isn't completed or funded by the HOA. The boardwalk is funded by, as Mr. Mort did with his section, it's funded by the developer who fronts the riparian strip that has the boardwalk or needs the boardwalk. And so it's a catch-22 to some degree, unless the amendment is made that could encourage Riverwalk to proceed with its development, which has its own open space. The boardwalk doesn't get completed, so it's almost to be careful what you wish for. You don't get more open space because you say you don't have enough open space, and it goes around in a circle. So we think that, I mean, we didn't ask to be here, but you asked us to be here, or somebody did. We're here, and we think that an adequate basis has been set to grant the requested PUD amendment.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have
Any
a question for
questions? Yeah.
Mr. Magnuson. Yeah. So now that there's been some testimony from some of the homeowner association members that suggests that they didn't have proper notice or what have you, I'm just curious about the bylaws of the homeowners association. Was there actual meeting where this issue was discussed amongst present homeowners? And is there a bylaw that suggests that there has to be a majority of the homeowners to go forward with this kind of a process, or was it just a select number of homeowners who control the homeowners association, or was it the board of the homeowners association? Could you give us some insight about that?
It's the board of the homeowners association, which consists of 5 board members. The president, Mr. Nemec, who was here. The board of the homeowners has dealt with this at noticed board meetings since the issue came on the horizon in December, when we were contacted by city staff. So to answer your question, the decision ultimately to submit this application was made by the board by a 5-0 vote within, as I suggest, the authority granted to them by the governing documents to be the elected officials to run the HOA. As to whether or not, at the annual meeting, which I think the annual meeting's held in July or August, as to whether or not this issue was discussed in July or August, I wasn't there. I don't know. I kind of tend to probably doubt it because in my involvement representing the HOA, I was unaware of it until the city raised it. So I think it's fair to say that it wasn't discussed at an annual member meeting. The annual members elected the board. The board dealt with it by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thanks.
You're all set. Thank you.
Are we having discussion?
I'm waiting.
Well, I'll start. I don't know if discussion is my view.
Mr. Chairman, I think you need to close the public hearing
We got somebody else?
before there's further discussion.
Oh, I need to officially close it? Okay. I guess I didn't close it yet. Go ahead and state your
May
name.
I do a point of clarification? I've
I need
lived
just-
there now for, Deborah
State-
Vernon.
Okay.
I've lived there now for 13 months, and we have not received any word from the board. This is the only thing we've received, and that's a public notice from you all about this. There's been no email blast, there's nothing set up for that, and there's been no notification through the mail. So this is the first time a lot of us here, residents, have heard about this.
Well, unfortunately, you got the notice from the city.
April 25, I got this.
Yeah. So you got that, and that's the purpose
There
of
was
it.
some slight information about Mr. Williams doing this at the last board, but it was never any mention of green space at that. It was just too new at that time.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, so now public testimony is closed. Thank you. It's good to have a lawyer there. So, is there anything you wanted to add from the staff level? No? Okay.
They can,
So now we're into discussion.
if we have some discussion up here, we can ask staff questions of it, can we not?
Sure.
Okay, very good.
That's what they're there for.
I'll start off. I'm not supportive of reducing open space from 18 to 10%. However, I believe that the riparian strip is a but-for, and if it wasn't for that riparian strip, we would not have the dock. And so, and the riparian strip may not fit the definition, our definition of open space, usable open space, the city's open space. But it seems to me the spirit, it does meet the definition of open space. For absent that riparian strip, we would not have the dock. I would like to propose that in this single instance, only this instance, that we should declare that the riparian strip, for our purposes, for this specific issue, is open space.
Commissioner, I completely agree with that, and that's kind of where I was hinting before with my example of the, 20 or 200 by 200 foot green tot lot thing with a couple of amenities, and you could go around there and there's a pile of boulders that looks good with a waterfall, and every square inch of that thing was considered to make the 10%. But some of it is shy of sitting on a rock with a book maybe. I think we can get a little bit too literal with this usable thing, and go out to Cougar Bay and sit on a bench and enjoy the other acreage of, it's kind of swampy reedland, but it's pretty cool. And there's some usability from just enjoying the view and being there and the solitude and such and whatnot. Maybe I'm a little bit head in the clouds here, but I think in this case, the standard really is 10%. And we make that without the riparian. And so, if it's a kind of a close call anyway of whether the riparian is the but for and it enables the boardwalk, which is pretty cool, and this is in fact a PUD, you folks might not be all that welcoming to see people from like me come down and use your area, thank you very much, as opposed to some of these PUDs that are behind gates and such. I think this is a PUD that's a stand-up PUD that's great for the community. We're supposed to be up here protecting the whole community and looking out for the interests of the public. And, the perpetual open space that riparian strip and the boardwalk provide that is arguably 18%, it's certainly 10%, which is the presumptive standard. I think this PUD stands up either way you look at it.
Okay. I have nothing to say.
You have nothing to say?
No, I'm good. Go ahead. I'm listening.
I think we're splitting hairs at this point. It is what it is. The land is there. There's only a little bit left. We can't pull it out of the air to get 18%. I think that one has to be broad-minded and say, okay, we've got a riparian wall. It enables, and it's twinning with that boardwalk. We can't have one without the other. And it just is reality. I think we have to move on. Now, the homeowners have to question, did they sign a piece of paper that said they guaranteed 18% homeowners green space? And if so, then they have a problem. But that's within their own house. We can't solve that problem. We only have what's left. And I think it's time to move on, improve what you have, make it as lush as you can with what you've got, and keep it viable for all of you and the public, which is our priority here. And also, we can't solve the problems of the cars. We'll just get more people on their bicycles because we can't keep them off your streets. And we won't be able to do that. We can't police it unless you want to put a gate up and a wall. And that's not going to happen, at least not in our time. So I think we ought to move on, and I think we ought to accept the 10%. And if you count riparian wall as 4%, bonus. It's what it is, and we need to stop sitting on this. I think it's time to move on and get you moving so it looks good. Right now, it's not looking so good. So that's my 2 cents.
I agree.
I think that magnificent drawing we're looking at up there, I think that was Chess Run's original drawing there that almost,
doesn't exist.
It almost looks like Epcot Center or something up there with everything that's going on. And,
don't look at it.
As I said earlier, the world looked pretty rosy when that was presented to us, and it looked like there was no limit to what was happening in Coeur d'Alene back in '05. But then the economy hit the skids back in '08 and '09, and we had a national depression or recession, depending how you look at it. And so this, along with a lot of other things, went through foreclosures, and the parts and pieces of it were repackaged and developed in a different way. And I imagine, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the homeowners in Belle Rive bought bought their properties there and maybe didn't even have any idea what was once proposed there, so maybe the staff should have caught this years ago. Maybe it just happened, but as you said, it is what it is, and this is what we've got here right now. We've got some beautiful homes down there, a nice development as it turned out. Much smaller scale than what this was envisioned, a lot less density. I'm kind of wondering, it seems like 6 1/2 dozen of another. I mean, do we, you know, I don't know if staff wants to give us any input, but we count the boardwalk as open space and the 18 works, or what negative effects could there be to the homeowners association if it's, or in the homeowners, if it's lowered to 10%? It still is what it is.
Do they have to pay tax on 18% that isn't 18%? Nothing? It doesn't show up?
I don't.
What do you do with that?
I don't know what the assessor thinks of this
Yeah, where does the
area.
assessor sit on this? I mean, that's accountants.
Normally, the association would pay tax on the common areas,
and
and then
so
the
we have to-
homeowners pay the tax on their
property.
personal, their property.
So are we
But I
10%
don't
or
know.
18%?
Who knows, yeah.
It seems
Probably
We won't know
also,
tonight.
Commissioners, to clarify, it's probably also just based on how it's platted. So
Pardon me?
even if it's not improved, there are areas that are common areas and open space. So I'm guessing the taxation would stay the same.
Yeah, I get, that's
up to
really a
county.
separate issue, yeah, I really
Yeah.
don't know that it fits into our decision. Is there anything you can give us as far as, I don't know what the effect is, whether we, like I said, Commissioner Lutrip had a suggestion about incorporating the boardwalk as part of the open space. I don't know whether it stays at 18 or whether it goes to 10, what effect that has on the homeowners, other than right now we've got a non-conforming problem.
Well,
I think
I'm thinking that, to clarify that the open space applies to the riparian area.
Okay, you're not you're saying the
No,
riparian.
the riparian area,
Okay.
and-
I thought you meant both.
No,
Okay,
just
sorry.
the riparian area, because
Right.
under our definition, that does not meet, that riparian area does not meet the definition of open space. And I think we've had testimony and time gone by and so forth, that this may be an appropriate time for us to declare, in this instance only, that riparian space is, for purposes of our calculation, open space. And that will get us close to 18%. It'll be 6/10 of an acre less than 18%. So, and I think the proponent said acknowledged that 6/10 of an acre was not hard to get. So I would think that we could address the issue just by simply declaring in this one case that riparian area is open space for these purposes. Now, I don't know if that meets any legal requirement and whatnot, but that's my thought.
From staff's perspective, I don't know that it's going to get you to exactly 18%, but I think it's definitely more than 10%. So I don't know how the best wording would be. The one exhibit, we can pull that up again if you'd like to see the one exhibit
I'm
that
sorry,
showed.
I can't hear you, Hillary.
We get a lot of, we can hardly hear, and we get a lot of echo up here. It maybe sounds good back there, but it's really tough up here.
Okay.
I don't know what we do. Or you talk louder
I'll
or
try again.
something.
So we can pull up that open space exhibit and maybe talk through that again. Our calculations, I don't think you could quite get to 18%, but you would be closer. I think you would be above 10% if you did include the riparian area and the areas that they have proposed to improve. So I think overall, and I think from the property owners there, they aren't going to see much of a difference other than what's presented tonight. There are going to be improvements to the open space, so it will be enhanced open space areas as well as the extension of the boardwalk and the connection to the river.
So if we declared the riparian space open space, we still would be under 18%.
We're not there.
So we are, in fact, reducing the open space.
Well, in terms of having it improved open space, the areas that are, it's still going to have areas that are platted, and that was that argument that was discussed in December. There's areas that are platted as open space that have not yet been improved. So you're going to get close to 18%, but staff's recommendation was to reduce to 10%, which is the code requirement. If they're above the 10%, even better. So I don't think the HOA is saying that they're not going to try to get above that. They're going to continue landscaping and enhancing that riparian strip, and then the areas to be improved are denoted in those exhibits presented tonight.
The reason I like my suggestion is that I believe we're ill-served by changing an open space in a PUD after a PUD has been in existence for numerous years. I just think that whether it's 18%, 8%, or 80%, at one time, we agreed to this, we, the city, the developer, the property owners, and so forth. And for us to modify that at a later date, I just don't think is in anyone's best interest. And so by proclaiming in this particular case the riparian strip open space, which I think a lot, well, in my opinion, it is open space because, but for that, we wouldn't have the dock. That's why I'm proposing it.
Well, it was going to be open space when the original boardwalk was going to be built on it, and then that changed. And I understand the concerns some of the homeowners have. That's why I'm, I think we're all trying to grasp what the ramifications of this are. To me, it doesn't look like anything changes for the homeowners if it goes down to 10%.
We can't.
And whether or not that riparian strip is public space or not, I don't see how that changes anything other than, I guess if it's not open space, the public wouldn't have a right to use it, so that would give some buffer to the development. But either way, it's not really usable anyway, whether it's open space or not. So I guess it gives them some control if it's owned by the development and it's not open space. I tend to agree with the ones of you that say it is what it is. And what
I agree that the strip, which is, I think, the center of the focus here, isn't usable, but it's visually there still, and the boardwalk couldn't be there without that. And if it becomes non-open space and reverts back to the homeowners, they're going to maintain it probably a lot better than open space would be maintained there. And it'll probably look, and I don't know what it looks like, but it'll probably look a lot better than it does right now. My main focus is that the boardwalks stay open space so people can use the boardwalk and get close to the river more than anything else. And there's access points throughout the rest of the property, which isn't, and I believe you asked a question, what's going to be taken away in that 8%? There isn't, that I see, anything that's being taken away that the people can't still use. And plus, the boardwalk is going to be extended. There's a number of things in here that they have to do, which I read over a number of times, which makes the whole area, I believe, in my view, even better for the public. And there's a timeline that it has to be done by. And if that timeline isn't done, then they have to put a bond up or do whatever they've got to do to get it done. And at least there's a enforceable timeline now to get the boardwalk, get more open space and everything done. If this doesn't go through, it's just going to be what it is, and this is going to go back and forth forever. I hear what the people feel as the homeowners, that they might be losing something, and I have to agree. That's a HOA issue. If there's miscommunication or not enough communication and stuff. But as far as the city goes, we're trying to get this into compliance so things can move ahead, and the ordinance citywide is 10%.
I'm going to take one more swing at this, Tom, and I think we're really kind of saying the same thing a little bit differently. In this case, I think one thing that we all agree on is we've kind of lost the history and the clarity of this thing. As you said, 10% is the standard. And a lot of PUDs pass muster right here that are just right down to the third decimal at 10%, barely make it. In this case, if we approve this 10%, there's really a lot more open space, the riparian, its usability is maybe a little bit in doubt.
But it was never usable.
But we're getting a generous 10% is what I'm saying, and we're getting a lot of public enjoyment, and that's what we're here to protect.
Right.
And so, again, I think comparing this, and it's very different than a cottage grove, a meadow ranch, or whatnot, but, you know, this is a good deal, 10%.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I hear the homeowners' concern about lowering it from 18 to 10, and I'm trying to make sure we're not doing anything against or that unfavorable to the homeowners, and I don't find anything, and that's what I'm getting from you too. It's still the same thing. The one element that I think is key in this is that there was an intent that there's a public boardwalk back when this was created back in '05. Instead of a public boardwalk along the riparian strip, we have a floating public boardwalk, which it evolved into over the years, but it's still a public boardwalk. So that's the key element, I think, that is there, and that's still preserved. I don't think the homeowners have lost anything. I think they actually gain a little bit of control having that riparian strip be owned by the homeowners association instead of being open ground. The public access to the river is protected because that remains public. If I was a homeowner, I probably wouldn't be crazy about that being in a public dock, but it is what it is. It's always been public, and it's going to continue to be public. So,
Mr. Chair, I just would maybe seek the city attorney's help or maybe our discussion that should we choose to reduce it from 18 to 10%, that we do it in a very considered manner such that it doesn't open the door for all other open space areas that may be in excess of 10%, wanting to come in to reduce their open space down to the city's minimum. I believe that this is a very unique situation, and you heard me say it about the riparian strip. That was why I mentioned that we make it for this purpose only open space. But we just, when we do act on this, if we do reduce it 10%, we need to do it in a fashion that is not suggesting that all open space in excess of 10% is superfluous, is too much.
I agree with you. To put this in another way, I'm directing this at you, I'm pointing that way. I think I could rephrase this to say, does this create a precedent where other developments could come in and ask to reduce their open space? I don't think it does.
I would say that you made it very clear that the unique aspects of this particular development are what is driving the motion or the application, as well as the discussion from the commission. So I think you've made it very clear that this is a unique situation, and each other PUD has the right to come in and make a motion, request a change in the PUD, but you would then decide that based on the unique circumstances of each development.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think we learned a lot about this in economics and history, and things called moratoriums might happen next time. Stop before you do anything. So, it's the accounting, and we just lost track of it. So I think everyone learned from this one a lot.
It was really unique because it went
Very.
through foreclosure and different owners, and
Chaos.
yeah, the city had some staff changes, so just what it is what it is.
Do we have to do findings on this, like or regular findings? Because I'm looking for a regular findings things. I don't see anything in
Kramer?
here.
I thought I saw them in there. This also, we can do this here tonight. This also is something that could be given to the attorney for the findings.
I think we could muddle through it. Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion.
I think everybody would be fine with you making a motion.
I would make a motion that we adopt findings in order as follows, that this matter came before this commission tonight, May 10th, 2016, for PUD 1-4.5, a modification of PUD Planned Unit Development Open Space for Bella Reeve Homeowners Association, HOA, for plus or minus 24 acres between former Burlington Northern Railroad and the Spokane River, in the Bellerive Planned Unit Development, and that we adopt findings B1 through B7 that are laid out in the staff report. That B8 finding with respect to the comp plan, that the B8A, that the proposal is in conformance with the comp plan, specifically with the emphasis on public access to the river, and specifically objective 1.03, 1.04 having to do with waterfront development, 1.05 with vistas, 1.09 promoting parks, 1.11 with respect to community design, 1.13 with respect to open space, and 1.14 recreation, that this proposal syncs nicely with the comp plan, and it is in conformance with the comp plan. And that B8B, that the design of the site is compatible with the location and setting and existing uses, and that's based on the fact that really this is built out. It's what we see on the ground. It's before our eyes. It is lower density than the original conceived, what did you call it, Epcot Center vision, and less density and such. So B8B is compatible. B8C, the proposal is compatible with the natural features. Again, we talked at length about the boardwalk being the but-for enabling the the boardwalk necessitates the strip there. The fact that this is built out before our eyes, we can see for ourselves that the topography and the vegetation and streams and other things are protected. With respect to B8D, that this proposed action will be adequately served by streets and utilities and services, and that is based on the documentation that we have in our staff report by the city engineer, water, wastewater departments, fire department, and such for services. B8E, that this proposal does provide adequate common space of no less than, could be more, no less than 10%, again, based on our review and interpretations of what makes up the 10% and such. B8F, off-street parking, as described by Planner Stroud of her and staff analysis, that with respect to the units and the way it's calculated, that it meets the standards by the city, and that the proposal provides B8G, it does provide for a method of maintenance, perpetual maintenance, by the established HOA. So in conclusion, the motion would be that we find the request for Bellerive HOA, that we should approve it and include, I believe there's 17 conditions?
There are 11 proposed conditions, and number 3 was modified by staff.
Yes, that's what I said. Thank you.
If I can perhaps add to that, there's a timeline, I believe, in the package of certain things that need to be done. I'm trying to find that, but...
I think those are embodied in those conditions.
Are they in the conditions?
12 months, yeah, from approval.
Okay.
Mr. Ingalls, do you want to put the phrase unique elements and conditions in the portion of reducing the open space to 10%?
My sense is that I agree with you. And I think the record of this being captured on video, and it lives in the, in the archives of our discussion, and the city attorney had touched on that. I don't know that it belongs in a motion and such.
Well, it would last longer,
I think we've recorded, the thinking.
but it's not recorded in the motion, and that's where it counts.
But the motion is for this action. You're
Reducing it to 10%.
considering, future actions, and I think with respect to future action, just our encapsulation of our dialogue here is where we're at on that. But that's my thinking.
Well, it seems to me we are reducing it 10%. That's not future actions, that's actions right now. This is what we're doing.
I think,
Could,
you can,
go ahead.
no, you can probably say that it's a unique condition here, and it has no way, in fact, affecting any of the approved PUDs that have been approved.
It's not global, it's specific.
Yeah, this is just a general comment, and I agree. I don't
I was
think a
thinking we could
condition.
add a finding that this is a unique situation, and also that I think that the key element of this whole open space is the fact that there was the public boardwalk along the water. There isn't a big piece of parkland. Some developments have a big piece of parkland or something like that. The key element with this one has been that boardwalk, and that's preserved the public access to the water. So having said that, in a unique situation.
I respect Commissioner Luttrup's comment, and I think we could back up a skosh to B8E here as we make the finding pertaining to the 10%. Our finding is based on, the testimony we've heard tonight, an analysis of the history and the standards and whatnot, and recognition that this is a very unique and peculiar example.
Yeah, that would be fine. That would
So
certainly-
that's how if that motion with respect to B8E could weave that notion in there, and the attorney's nodding his head, so I would
Yes,
amend the
no,
motion.
There's
to
been no
reflect that.
second, so you can
helpful.
continue on your motion.
Second.
Okay, is that how his motion had all the elements you needed?
Yes.
You're satisfied. Now we have a second to it by Messina. Any more discussion? Okay. Move over to Shanna and roll call now.
Fleming?
Yes.
Ingalls?
Yes.
Messina?
Yes.
Luttrip?
Yes.
Rumpler?
Yes.
Okay, so that is approved.
Start
PUD
digging.
1-04M.5, I think that's everything. Reduce the open space to 10%. That's approved unanimously. So, I'm just fumbling through my staff report here for the other hearing. I think I found it. You doing that one too, Tammy? Okay, so we have, the other hearing is Riverwalk Townhomes, LLC. The location is Bellerive Lane. This is a proposed two-lot, four-track preliminary plat called Bellerive 6th Edition. This is quasi-judicial. This is S-2-16. Does anyone have a conflict to declare on this one? Okay. And seeing none, I'll turn it over to you again, Tammy.
All right, thank you, Chairman Jordan. Tonight, we have the second item, which is S-216, a two-lot, four-track preliminary plat subdivision known as Bellerive 6th Edition. It is a .945-acre parcel located at the east end, or east terminus of Bellerive Lane and on the south side of the existing Centennial Trail. And the applicant is Riverwalk Townhomes, LLC. So the decision is Riverwalk Townhomes LLC is requesting Bellerive 6th Edition, two-lot, four-track subdivision that is within the C17 PUD known as Bellerive. This is a site photo of the subject property. It's that .945 acre parcel. I won't give you the complete history since we did talk about that in the PUD, but I will just briefly go over that on May 13, 2008, when the Planning Commission approved the Bellerive PUD to modify the boundaries, one of the conditions was that they replat and Phase 4 to fulfill the condition number 9, which did include the open space which we just spoke about. So this is Bellerive's 6th edition, similar to the one you guys saw in December. There's going to be 2 lots, Lot 1, proposed Lot 2, and this is the open space tract. Finding B8A, that all of the general preliminary plat requirements have or have not been met, and as attested to by the city engineer. The preliminary plat includes 2 lots and 4 tracts. Tract A would provide private open space area. Tract B would be for public open space area. Tract C would be a driveway. Per Gordon Dobler, city engineer, the preliminary plat submitted contains all of the general preliminary plat elements required by code. So I provided this graphic for you on the previous item. Again, the stormwater tract, it's going to be a private community garden, 10-foot non-exclusive temporary access easement, and then the driveway and the open space area. Finding B7B, that the provisions for streets, alleys, rights-of-way, easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, and utilities are or not adequate where applicable. So that is noted in your staff report on pages 4 through 6, and I'll give you a brief bit of information on the utilities. So as far as sewer, the subdivision is required to extend public sanitary sewer infrastructure conforming to all current city standards and sewer policies. There's a code section, 13.12, sewer laterals shall be owned and maintained by the property owners. Number 3, 20-foot wide sewer easement centered over the public sewer main. Then it's got some additional information that has to be dedicated and accepted by the city. And the nearest public sanitary sewer is located at the end of Bellerive Lane, which borders the subdivision request. And the city's wastewater utility presently has the wastewater system capacity and willingness to serve the project. As far as water, the public water system has adequate capacity to effectively serve the proposed plat for domestic irrigation and fire flow. And then stormwater management plan would be required to be submitted and approved. The ITE trip generation manual estimated that an average of 3 trips per day would be generated at peak hours. And the adjoining streets, Bellerive Lane intersects with BB Boulevard, and it does provide numerous outlets for vehicles entering and exiting the subject property, and the roadway in the adjoining streets will accommodate the additional traffic volume. And an additional item, subdivision improvements, Lot 2, Block 1 on Bellerive Lane is a 12-foot in width, which is less than the minimum standard. That deviation was approved when the original PUD was requested. And as far as fire, they did submit a comment, and fire department access to the site, road widths, surfacing, maximum grade, turning radius, and fire protection would all be required, and the fire department would address all concerns of the site at the time of building permit submittal. Finding B7B, that the proposed preliminary plat do or do not comply with all of subdivision design standards and all of the subdivision improvement standards. All subdivision infrastructure that is required to be installed for purposes of obtaining building permits for the subject lots can be installed through the site development permit process, per Gordon Dobler, the city engineer. And then finding B7D, the lots proposed in the preliminary plat do or do not meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. So this subject property is currently zoned C17 PUD, and I mentioned in the last request for the modification of the PUD that the PUD modified the height limit for courtyard homes, boardwalk homes, as well as the reduced setbacks for courtyard and boardwalk homes, and the setback along the Spokane River. And we have, I believe, 17 conditions that are proposed for this requested subdivision. And again, condition number 3 was modified as it was in the PUD. Any questions for me?
Looks like fewer this time than last time. Okay. Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
we have a sign-up sheet for this one?
We do.
Who's going to be the applicant on this one? Oh, come on down, state your name and address for the record. This is also, I think this is quasi-judicial. Yep, this is quasi-judicial. I'll swear you in after you state your name and
Good evening.
address.
My name is John Williams, 7358 North Aaron, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Okay, Mr. Williams, you swear the testimony you're going to give us will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, it's all yours.
Good evening, Commissioner and Planning Commission. I'm pleased to be here. This is my, I think, second or third time. Had a little detour along the road, but we're back together. I appreciate your consideration, your thoughtfulness in looking at the last, I think you may recall that was my application that precipitated a lot of this discussion, which was overall very good because I think there needs to be more clarity in terms of what is open space. It can be interpreted by a lot of people in a lot of different ways, so I'm glad to see that happen. And I'm not going to say too much other than there's condition number 3 that the staff has been kind enough to modify, but I am opposed to that condition. For the primary reason is it's not necessary. We have multiple access points to the Centennial Trail, to the future boardwalk, to the open space. Having another access, perpetual 10-foot easement through my private garden to the BLM land is unnecessary, redundant, and I have yet to hear any justification from the city as to why they need that. They believe it's a good idea. The staff believes it should be there. Well, I believe as a homeowner, I don't want the public tromping through my garden, right by my open garage potentially, getting access to a street when they can get access to it 25 feet away around the corner. There's plenty of access points. So the condition needs to be removed, and then I'll gladly open up my checkbook and spend $150,000 to make all those improvements that we talked about. The boardwalk will be extended. I'll put a nice sitting area, meandering path, flowering trees, shrubs, landscaping. I'm doing other work on other parts of the PUD property that doesn't belong to me to make this happen. So I'm the guy with the checkbook, and I think I'm entitled to a little privacy and quiet enjoyment of my property without providing an unnecessary easement through a portion of my property. So I really can appreciate it, and I'm willing to sign up if you can just eliminate condition number 3.
And if we don't, you won't sign?
I'm going to have to talk over it with my wife because she's the one that sent me here to be here tonight. So we want a garden. We've wanted a garden. I've talked to the community garden a long time, and the last thing I need is a 10-foot public access easement through the middle of it when there's other access points within a very short distance. So
You've been listening to the discussion we had in open space.
yes.
And I'm sure that many people share your opinion when it's next to their property. I think open space is very important to the city, and we rely heavily on the staff and their recommendations.
Right.
They're not quote marks. They're not quote marks. They're their recommendations, their expertise, their desire to meet the city's requirements. I think you have something in the city wants access to water and so forth. So I think it's very, very important. If it's there, it's very important to stay.
Well, if there's code justification for it or some sort of ordinance I need to follow, then I'm happy to understand that. But I've been given no justification for this belief that we should have an access.
I don't know what justification there is.
I don't know.
Necessary.
I'd like to hear it.
If it's the city's, if it's the planning department's recommendation based on their charge of meeting the city code needs and ordinance, and it comes to us and it makes our, if we take some action and it's not with your approval, then don't open your checkbook and don't do it. I mean, that's fine.
That's what I'm happy to do.
But I don't, I somewhat feel threatened.
Well, I'm not being threatened. I'm
Not
just
personally,
suggesting
but just
that my objection, the only objection I have to this is a condition that is redundant, unnecessary, and not justifiable. And if you can tell me it's not redundant, tell me it is justifiable for this ordinance, then I will be happy to comply.
Well, as a commissioner, I believe that the city and the planning department follows their rules and that they don't need to necessarily go through it. They can point to you what we have said, what the council has talked about access to water, about open space, about public access, and I think they've done that.
The portion we're talking about is access from the street to the BLM land. It has nothing to do with the access to the water. It has to do with the street. Can I draw it on here?
No,
From right here through this area of my garden to the BLM land. It's when there's an access point right here, there's an access point right here, there's access point over here. So I believe, and my wife is opposed to this, and I'm saying that at her request. And if it's a hard and fast requirement, they don't have to think long and hard about signing up for it. That's my testimony.
Okay. Did you have anything else?
No, other than that, I love it. It's wonderful. I'm happy to make that part of the neighborhood the best it can possibly be.
Well, I appreciate that. Okay, well, you'll have some time for rebuttal in a few minutes. I think I've got a lot more people signed up on this sign-up sheet than there are left here, but I need to go through this real quick. So we have Deborah Vernon. It's probably gone. And now I have to try and remember how to pronounce these names all over again. And Jan Guerra.
She's gone.
Yeah. And then we had, Stephen, the Homeowners Association president. Did you want to testify, sir? Stephen? Did you want to testify on this one? Okay. I know these probably were confusing with the two hearings together. Phil Ward, 801 2nd Street. Is Phil here? Okay. Then we had Matt Alton.
He's gone.
Yep. John Magnuson, did you want to testify on this?
No,
okay. And Jim Van Sky left. William Borga, I think he left. And then John, is that?
Bird?
Oh, John Butler.
Oh, John's gone.
John left too, didn't he? Okay.
Oh, there's
Is John still here?
He's holding
Oh.
the building.
John? Oh, okay, you don't want to testify? You're holding the building. Okay.
He's holding it up.
Is there anyone that wants to testify on this I didn't call that's here still? Okay. You know, I don't know at what point to do this. I wanted to do this before he comes up for his rebuttal. I wouldn't mind just hearing your reasoning for that 5-foot easement through the garden. Maybe you can kind of point and drag and click or something and just give us the staff's reasoning for that.
All right, I will help clarify what staff's thought was. So this area that is being now proposed as a private community garden was open space for the PUD and was open to the public. So this whole area along that road would have been open to the public, and then the swale would have remained here. The condition 3, as it was first drafted, actually required that there would be a public access trail here connecting down to this open space in perpetuity. So we actually revised the condition, and we thought it would be agreeable to Mr. Williams to remove that, to say, okay, we won't require that you have a trail there in perpetuity because you don't want to have a trail next to your future homes. So instead we said, how about having a connection here? Because the people that are coming off of the boardwalk up the path could easily see that this is how they connect onto the Centennial Trail and vice versa, to provide an easy public connection through. And we required that there would be a 10-foot public access easement. There's already going to be a 10-foot public utility easement for a fire hydrant, so it seemed like a natural location to put a continuous, it's probably another additional 5 feet to get through to the other side. So to have that be the place where the public could get through and have some signage making it clear, this is how you get to the trail, this is how you get to the boardwalk. So that was staff's position. We did tell the applicant he could ask the commission if they would entertain having the access be down here. Staff thought that'd be a little difficult with signage because you'd have to have a couple signs trying to direct people to and from to figure out how to get there versus just ending up in the driveway of these people. So we were trying to make it so that the public wouldn't end up in his garage or his driveway or disturb those individuals, and just make it through to the places they need to get. So that was our thought on that. Anything else that I missed, Tammy?
And I'm sorry, I lost track of that.
The mouse?
The mouse really quick. Where was the alternative place?
Up
There
3 lots.
is where, let's see, Lacrosse, I guess. This is
So it's like
Lacrosse
150
at some point in the
feet,
future
200
may
feet
connect
up.
in here. So there's,
So that's the alternative.
It's about
that's
200
what
feet up the
Mr.
road.
Williams is proposing. Otherwise, as he was saying, to go down here, you'd have to go all the way down on the future boardwalk and then back up again to get the Centennial Trail, which is not really a direct route for individuals who are trying to get a shortcut.
So how do you feel about your alternative up there?
As I said, I think it's not easy for the public coming up here to say, oh, this is where I go, and we'd have to do additional signage to make it clear
Okay.
where to go.
But that's the option.
What about fencing around the public garden, since, as we've seen, this is a very high-traffic area?
Right, I would guess
Might
he
not have
would-
any carrots by the morning.
Correct. I think he would want to fence the community garden. It looks like it's 5,200 square feet is being proposed for the garden. So my thought is you probably wouldn't have the garden, wouldn't go from this whole thing all the way down. This is supposed to be a path, and he'd indicated this is also supposed to be for storm water
management
at some point in the future. So it seemed, and you can't have the hydrant fenced in the community garden, so our thought was that this could be the location that made the most sense for that public access. But it is up to the commission to determine where you'd like to have that
And
public
fenced
access.
and gated, because your chances, if you fence and gate the garden, at least there's a direct separation between the walkway, the hydrant, the garage, and the garden.
Mhm. And definitely you wouldn't, if you had a community garden there without a fence, people might think it is open for the public
Oh,
to take some
yes.
tomatoes and other
Mhm.
goodies.
Unfortunately.
Is that intended to be a Belle Reve residence community garden? Is that?
That is, Mr. Williams said it would be their private community garden. I don't know if that's just for these homes or if that's for Belle Reve. I'm not sure.
You can answer
That would be the
that.
applicants.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Thank
did
you.
we, and this last one question, the last little pointed end, is that part of our 10% calculation now,
Which
currently?
part, this part down here?
The very, yeah, the last.
Yes,
That
so
is now
that's what
currently
was
in that
just
10%
approved.
calculation.
Yep, this will be open space. So this is the area that was
Okay.
shown
So
for
we've got that thrown in. then.
overlook, the connection down to the water and
Okay.
down to the boardwalk. And then the boardwalk would be extended as well to
Okay.
probably about this point.
That's where the dog beach is or something? Is there a dog beach? Isn't
The
there
dog
dog
beach?
access, dog swimming beach?
People do take their dogs down there to the river.
right now. Okay. Okay.
All right, thank you, Hillary. Okay, Mr. Williams, you have some time for rebuttal. Just state your name and you get back to the podium there.
John Williams, still in Coeur d'Alene. What you don't see here, and maybe you don't recall, but there is a 29-acre parcel land owned by the BLM, soon to be leased by the city, and there's a future park going to go there. You recall that from the Four Corners plan? Do you guys know what I'm talking
Oh, yeah.
about?
Yep.
Right in this area right here, from here down to well past my property, is a parking lot proposed. That's a future parking lot. I have no interest in opening myself up to be the pathway from the entire parking lot through my garden when this little spot right here is owned by the city. It's been dedicated to the city back in the Belle Reve Second Edition. It's accessible, as is the BLM land, and it may be less convenient, but we can certainly put a sign there. Most people that walk this boardwalk are going to walk down here and up to the path and take a nice little sit and get to the Centennial Trail this way. I've not seen anybody, I don't live here yet, I hope to someday, and my garage, by the way, is right here. So people will be coming right through and looking right into my garage. So if there's a mandatory easement, we're going to tuck it over here as close to this swale area as we can, so it'd be a more direct shot, for one. I don't like the fact it's seeing it, but I just do not see the need for it when a few steps away, this is 150 feet to right here, to get access to the park, the future park, and more importantly, a big, ginormous parking lot that will exist here And if I have public access, it means I can never put any barrier there to protect myself from the noise and the oil spills and the beer drinking and all the things that go along with public parking lots and parks. That's my concern over the long run. So I hope you can appreciate that. I'm looking for quiet enjoyment for the people here that live in a very public area. And I just think it's the right thing to do. And I'm spending a lot of money. I've already moved, didn't mention this, I've already spent $30,000 to move the Centennial Trail off my property. And I made some improvements far upstream to be a good citizen. So I've made a great paved path in the BLM land. That took a lot of doing. Now I'm being asked to make a great boardwalk, which I'm happy to do, and nice meandering path up here. Where does it stop, I guess? How much more are you going to ask of me? I hope it's not the easement through my yard, in my garden. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, come on back.
Just to comment, you sat through the earlier public hearing, and while there's not a finding per se in this subdivision decision point with respect to the comp plan, this is somewhat unique in that you're a piece of the bigger PUD. So in a sense, you are a piece of making the whole PUD work. And so I would argue, and see where council is, that, you know, we really do need to consider the comp plan here, because we're talking about, again, the delicacy of the entire PUD working. And to read some of that, and, you know, it talks very strongly about this area. You know, the comp plan spent a lot of time on the Spokane River corridor, and it talks about public access should be provided to the river. And it talks about, you know, public space, you know, and connectivity adjacent to the Spokane River. It goes on, and it talks about water access for people, connectivity along the shoreline. So I think it's a huge piece of, again, you're not just looked at independently. We see with the whole open space thing and the quality of the open space that the connections to the river and to square this with the comp plan, I think that access is very important.
Well, and I agree with that, but I feel like we're providing superior access with a bench, meandering path, flowering trees, landscaping, irrigation. Right here, there's access. Right here is their access. And the access right here for the future parking lot is what I'm concerned about. I'm just, imagine yourself building a nice home here and then having a ginormous parking lot show up in your backyard. Now, it's not funded. I understand that. It may not ever be approved, but the plan is the plan, and the plan shows a giant parking lot with 6 pickleball courts. Pickleball people are rowdy.
A parking lot with a pickleball court?
Pickleball. There's
On a
6
parking
of them.
lot?
Those are
Right next to the parking lot. There's 6 of them right here in the plan. Go take a look at your Four Corners plan, and you'll see that. And so I just want to make sure that I have the ability to buffer myself as the best way possible and not be subjected to a bunch of traffic going close right to my garage, basically. Or I could, I mean, if it's a mandate and there's ordinance or there's some sort of justification other than just convenience because people don't have to walk 150 feet, I think that's a little weak myself. But if you have to have that, then we can talk about moving it over here closer to the swale so it's further away from my driveway and my garage. Just picture yourself living there and picture what's going on behind you, and then ask yourself if you want a pathway right by your house. And I agree, but there, and Commissioner Ingalls, there's already public access. We're making great improvements here. I'm spending a lot of money. This is not a cheap endeavor. And it's all coming out of my pocket because the HOA funds nothing.
So if we do the alternative you're asking for, how would we, let's see, we'd do some more signage, and would we have some fencing or something that kind of guides the people around the little dogleg there?
There would just be a sign up here that says access to Centennial Trail left, and then right here they'll see it. The Centennial Trail is right here. It's 15 feet from here. Actually, the Centennial Trail touches this little corner and goes right here. It goes onto this property right here. So the Centennial Trail is right here.
Yeah.
It doesn't even need a sign. If you need a sign to see the Centennial Trail, then you probably need to see an iDog.
Yeah, and then
It's
they
right
also
there.
have the access farther down the point right there, don't they?
Yeah, the Centennial Trail runs right here. It used to run right down this whole path, but I moved it completely off the property per requirements because of the open space. I had to move it before I could even get to this point. So I'm a worn-out soldier from this whole process. I feel like I've been bullied for a year and a half, and maybe that's not how the staff feels, but that's certainly how I feel as a citizen. And that was the last straw for my wife because she's more upset than I am. So I just appreciate your consideration on that element.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I don't think anyone's intended to bully you.
Well,
You have a
never starts out that
complicated,
way.
you have a complicated little piece of property there, and I think you're going to have something nice when you're done. But it's a complicated one because, as Commissioner Ingalls talked about, you're part of the bigger picture right there, and the whole thing is complicated, and you're a complicated little part, one of the last little parts of that big complicated
And
picture.
I happen to be the last Mohican or whatever they said.
Yeah.
I'm signed up for that unwillingly, I suppose, when I first started, but I'm here and we're this close, and I think it's a minor issue. And to me, it's a big issue. To the city, I think it's a minor issue because they already own this piece of property right here. It doesn't require anything more. I'll put the fire hydrant across the street if they don't like it over there. That's where the fire department really wanted, actually right in the middle of our plot right here. So the fire department, I think we can work with them to find the space, and we can put the fire hydrant wherever they like it. So.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. We have something else. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to weigh in here that I'm actually sympathetic to your argument. I mean, if you spend any time down there, and I actually have, essentially it's overrun with public access. I mean, the woman who was here recently showed a picture of whether that was by design or not, because this development is on the river in a sense. It really is. It's essentially wide open public access, as far as I could tell, and pointing out that there is sufficient and adequate access. Without the condition number 3, I would be in agreement, because really fundamentally, someone can just park on the road and really access it really fundamentally anywhere.
This is a parking lot on the weekends because people use a trailhead there. That's why. And I clean up a case of beer cans
I'm also sympathetic to your
month.
journey here. I mean, I think you've been here twice now. You've been in front of the city council. I think as a landowner, I think you've demonstrated a willingness to invest your own treasure in capital in improving this, and I think the point that you're making, where is there a hard and fast ordinance or rule that this has to be here? There really fundamentally isn't. I think this is a question of just as has been pointed out. I think this is kind of a nuanced, it's a nuanced and complicated piece of property, and you could actually hang your hat, on the comprehensive plan, or you could hang your hat on the unique nature of this, kind of property being proximal to the river. But I think you've made an actually compelling case that by not having that access point, you're not limiting public access to the river. You're not limiting public access to the Centennial Trail. It's obvious how you would access the Centennial Trail from any of those points near your property. And I'd also be sympathetic to the idea that you certainly don't really want the public kind of walking, through your public garden or your private garden, and having it so closely aligned with your property. I mean, kind of directing people right into your property in a sense, if this was in fact executed according to the condition number 3. So I certainly would like to speak to this, as I am supportive of removing condition number 3.
Thank you very much. And just to answer the question earlier, this community garden is for there's potentially 4 owners, two duplexes, courtyard homes, and that community garden is to serve these people here. I originally proposed it be for the entire community, but then it created a parking issue, and we don't need, that was a whole nother sort of can of worms, so I made it private property for this group of people. I would certainly not hesitate if these folks wanted to involve themselves and to grow some flowers and vegetables. I'd love that, because I think the community garden idea, which I heard here a couple months ago.
That's correct. The commission
with
did
Pilgrim's
hear
Market. I thought that was fabulous. That's what inspired me.
Yes.
And it took me a long time to get to the point where I could even find a spot for one without getting.
I think we're unanimous in support of that community garden effort.
You can't have it because you need this, you need that. So
thank you.
That's where I'm at.
Sure. Yeah, I'm probably not going to vote unless there's a tie, but it doesn't look like a tie when I add up. But I'm sympathetic to you, and it's nothing against the staff. I think the staff's done great on this, but I'm just trying to, I look at this and trying to come up with I understand your position. I'm trying to come up with something that works, and I agree with you. I don't see the public access being harmed here. It's just a unique situation, and I don't want to go there again, but it's been talked about several times. This was a whole different plan when it was brought in 2005, and this public boardwalk was proposed, and instead of being what it was planned, it's turned into a lot much lower density private homes along the river that wound up with this public boardwalk in front of them that brings a lot of traffic down there. And so a number of us were at an education seminar last night, and there was some good points there, but this is maybe a classic example of where you've got a little bit of public-private conflicting uses that are rubbing up against each other there. But all we can do is make it the best we can make it, because part of the bargain back in 2005 was that the public had access to that waterfront, and they're going to continue to have access. So we just have to do the best we can.
And it's a wonderful place. La Peep, I think, is popular because it's a great riverside dining. It's one of the few places now you can actually boat and get a meal. Many other places have gone privatized or now in reconstruction mode, so it will become more popular. There's another restaurant pad right in that site, too. It's now a fitness center, but I suspect that'll be another nice deck-based restaurant there at some point. So the parking is a bit of a challenge. I don't know how we deal with that. Maybe it's a structured parking on one of the lots. I don't know. It's certainly not very easy to get place. And then the people, like I said, they park all the way down the street and get access to mostly the Centennial Trail.
That's why we need the BLM improvement.
Mr. Chairman,
that'll happen.
As you point out, with respect to the training we attended last night, and if you look at the findings, this is a subdivision, and you remember the dialogue that really, these subdivisions, it's really, does it meet the standards? Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. That's really the nature of these findings, and again, I think the only way I can kind of weave the argument of the comp plan in there is to say that this is part of a bigger PUD kind of thing, but the findings that are actually in the worksheet before us don't really touch on comp plan, and some of those arguments I was maybe trying to make with respect to river access and stuff. And
I tend to agree with Mr. Rumpler in that, my
good argument.
Commissioner. I think they've got enough access. I think that it's a pummeling down there by the public, and when you're spending this much to improve a piece of land, you do want some privacy, and it's impressive, the pounding that this area gets. And I think 150 feet more is irrelevant. I don't think that we need to add yet another sieve hole. And they can make their way down, they can walk along the boardwalk. They have plenty of options, and I don't think we should make it that easy for them to jump into the parking lot. And there are some safety issues there. There has been some tough people down there, and I think we have to make them work a little harder to get into these houses. So to me, this is, I wouldn't want that between the garden. I wouldn't want that proximity to my house, or I just discourage them, make it a little harder. And they're down there to enjoy life. 150 more feet's better for them. They'll have a longer life. So, yeah, I'm saying no. I don't think we need to chop through that garden space.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see any advantage to it.
There's almost, it's a different situation, but there's almost some of the similarities that we've had for years at Sanders Beach between the private and the public. It
absolutely is. It's like Venice Beach or any public where people and public and private are clashing. But I think they've got enough access points already. I don't think they need that one more. I don't think we need to fight for that one more access point. They got plenty of them.
I agree with that.
So, yeah. And I think people have to respect that these are private landowners as well. So, yeah.
I wonder if anyone's getting ready to make a motion.
Am I excused? I'll be right
Yeah,
over
is there any
there.
more questions of the applicant? I guess not, so you're excused.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
That's time
and
for me to
all that
say-
you've gone through to heretofore. It's been a long and arduous process. I appreciate it.
It's been an exhilarating experience. That's, this is where the,
Never to be repeated.
this is probably where the attorney tells me to say public testimony is closed, and we'll see what anyone's doing on a motion.
I'd like to make a clarification on
Oh, sure.
condition number 3.
Okay.
All right, so there are two parts to it. And the first portion of it, and I understand where you're coming from with your discussion on that access point that you were discussing. So the first portion of it states, a minimum 5-foot wide temporary public access trail using surface material acceptable to the city shall be provided from the terminus of Bellarive Lane and connecting Tract A, Bellarive First Edition, and Tract B, the future Bellarive Sixth Edition, prior to the recordation of that plat or be bonded for. And then it speaks to landscaping. So the first portion of this condition is speaking to that walking path, or that we would ask that remain in that condition. And at the time when the boardwalk is complete, here's the path, then they would remove that temporary public access easement because the extension of the boardwalk would be complete. Then the other portion of the condition was that 10-foot wide permanent public access easement shall be granted, and that's the portion that Mr. Williams is talking about here. So
keep half of this portion.
Correct.
The first paragraph.
Yes.
So speaking of the 5-foot, and it's a temporary pathway until such time as the other comes online.
Yes, when the boardwalk.
So we'll eliminate the last sentence, last two sentences.
When the
That's
dock
correct.
goes in, then that goes away.
That can go away.
Yes, just want to
Right.
clarify that.
So Tammy, how difficult then will it be for the people to access the dock?
They're on the dock.
By, when we remove this portion here, how much more difficult will it be for the people to access that? How far will they have to walk? Will they have to walk
I haven't
another
measured.
200 feet?
I
Another
haven't
5
measured
feet?
the distance, but, putting in signage, I don't know, what's your take, Hillary? 150 feet?
150
Because
feet?
that's what the applicant has stated.
Didn't look too far.
3 lot widths. It's not very far.
How what's the distance between the other access points? There are 2 other access points to the river, is there not?
This area where we have that fire hydrant where we're proposing the access point?
You can get down to the docks from that one, right where
From
your
this
cursor right.
point?
Now you go west to another access
here.
point, right?
From Bellarive Lane.
How far is that?
From this point down to this point?
You have, if you're driving down the road, if you're going towards the west and the river's to your left, you have several access points to get down to the dock. What's the distance between those access points?
I have not measured it, I don't know.
Is it a lot more than 100 feet?
Quarter-mile intervals or something, I'm not sure.
What I'm trying to get to is, how much of an extra walk is it? I mean, if it's equal spacing with the other access points, gee, that's fine. But if it's far longer than further between this and the next access point, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure I sympathize with making it more difficult for the people to access the water or the docks.
There wouldn't be any change to the access to the water. So there's the existing stairs down to the boardwalk at that location. It's more just connecting back over to BLM property and the Centennial Trail. And they would have to go kind of northwest to get to where La Crosse connects, which is going toward another access point that goes down to the river. So it won't make it more difficult there. We were just, as staff was concerned, we were trying to keep that public access because some of that open space was going away and the accessibility to the trail.
But we still keep the access, we just move it a little bit.
Yes.
I mean, I'm guessing it's around a couple 100 feet to the playground equipment out there, so it's not a long ways we're talking about. Actually, on the weekends, you probably have to walk down the street farther from wherever you can park your car.
It's parking.
Yeah, that's probably more than,
It's all parking.
there's probably more problem there, more distance than there is with the accesses.
Yeah, there's quite a few access points. They have long sidewalks down to them.
I can't see that it changes the convenience of access. I don't really.
They're down there to be fit and healthy. No.
Well, depending where you park, it might be closer to your car anyway, just it's six of
Exactly.
one, half dozen of another.
Right. Okay.
Thanks for your input, Tammy and Hillary.
Okay.
You doing the motion?
I don't know how to
Great.
do it. I'm scared to do
You'll do fine.
it. Oh, yeah, right. Well, let's see.
Brad will help you through it.
Who will? Oh, yeah. Well, I move that we approve this motion for the Bellerive Homeowners, let me see. For Homeowners Association location, 0.24 acres between the former Burlington.
Excuse me,
Northern Rail-
this one
Where do you
is
want me to be?
S216, and it's the Riverwalk Townhomes LLC.
Can't hear a word she said.
Okay,
Do you see
hold on,
that?
just
Where am
just
I?
a second. Okay, go ahead,
I've never
Tammy.
done a motion.
We'll be fine.
Not here.
It's always the first time. We'd be fine. I'll just tell the public here, we have a long outline form of findings to go through, so it's not as simple as just making a yes or no motion. So,
No.
what were you saying, Tammy?
No, I was letting her know the applicant was the other one.
Can't hear.
Well, I don't know what to do about the sound the last couple of
Cannot
meetings.
hear.
I didn't hear what you said.
Maybe this microphone, does this work better?
Yeah?
That's
Okay.
better.
So flip a couple pages, just make sure you use the right findings and order worksheet. I think you were on the PUD amendment versus the subdivision.
Okay.
So go to the very end of the packet and then just come back a couple pages to page
Where am
one.
I?
Yeah, there were
Just
two
wanna make
sets of
sure it's-
findings.
Go a little bit further.
Item
here.
S-2-16.
This one? Riverwalk Townhomes.
Last three pages.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. I move that we approve the Riverwalk Townhomes LLC, plus or minus .945 acre parcel located east of the terminus of Bellerive Lane and the south side of the existing Centennial Trail. Based on these findings, we find them in compliance B1 through B7A as approved, and then we're moving on to, where's our, okay, where did we get the?
Let's see, you're on,
B1, existing land uses.
you have does she need to do B7A?
B7A, that all of the general preliminary plat requirements have been met as determined by the city engineer. B7B, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, right-of-ways, easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities and utilities are adequate. At B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does comply with all the subdivision design standards contained in Chapter 16.15 and all of the subdivision improvement standards contained in Chapter 16.40 requirements. And that B7D, the lots proposed in the preliminary plat do meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. This is based on, let's see, criteria. Do all the lots meet the required minimum lot size? Yes. That all the lots have the required minimum street frontage? Yes. And that the gross density is within the maximum allowed for the applicable zone. And then we also have to approve the findings of the planners, and that we have the following subdivision conditions, correct?
Proposed, yeah, the conditions.
And that we accept these following conditions, that point one, prior to final plat recordation, all required subdivision improvements such as the landscaping, irrigation, and other improvements for all required open space areas throughout Bellerive shall be completed or bonded for at the 100% of the estimated present cost of such improvements. The estimate must be approved by the community planning director.
Point 2, if improvements are
You can-
bonded.
you can
we
adopt
just
those,
Adopt
too.
them all
And
with
then
the,
one
with the
right there, you
modification
have to read
to
that
point 3. And we will accept the first statement, which is a minimum 5-foot wide public access trail using surface material acceptable to the city shall be provided from the terminus of the Bellerive Lane and connecting to Tract A, private community garden and public access trail, and Tract B, improved open space of the future Bellerive 6th edition, prior to recordation of the final plat or bonded. And then the following 4 and 5 points, and the remaining 6 through 12.
Okay.
Okay?
Then you're back to this.
Okay. The Planning Commission pursuant to the aforementioned finds that the request of the Riverwalk Townhomes LLC for preliminary plat of approval as described in the application should be approved as stated.
Yeah, and you already attached the motions, I mean, the special conditions.
Yep.
Then we'll have to see if you have a second to your motion.
Anybody?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, second by Rumpler.
Your turn next.
And is there any discussion?
Trial by fire.
Okay, roll call.
Fleming?
Yes.
Ingalls?
Yes.
Messina?
Yes.
Lutrip?
Yes.
Rumpler?
Yes.
Okay, so that's approved, S-2-16. That was approved unanimously. So now we just need a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Chairman?
What, yeah?
One moment.
You're next.
In the modification of the PUD, the first matter that was on, condition 3 was also in that application.
Oh.
And so
Notice
I
that.
think there needs to be a motion and to modify that condition number 3 so that it reflects the same
Same.
considerations. And I've talked to Mr. Williams, who's also talked to Mr. Magnuson, and there's no objection to doing that. And I think it would be better to clarify it tonight, rather than have to come back for another meeting to modify that.
So I made the motion and findings for the previous PUD decision point to reduce the open space on that one. So I would, if I could, reopen that motion to reflect a changed condition 3 to be exactly worded the same as we heard here for the subdivision, to be reflected in that motion.
I'll second.
Does the second concur?
Concur.
Okay, so now we need to re-vote on, do we
We'll
do a roll call?
We'll
or
be
just
voting
a-
on this motion.
This motion.
Just this motion.
It's actually a third motion.
Right, we're just voting on the amendment to the motion.
Correct.
Is
Well,
that a roll
yes.
call or just a simple?
I would do it roll call.
Okay, Shanna?
Fleming?
Yes.
Ingalls?
Yes.
Lutrip?
Yes.
Messina?
Yes.
Rumpler?
Yes.
Okay, so that amendment to the motion is approved unanimously, so we got it now, right? So his wife will be
Yes.
happy now when he gets home.
Now
You can go home.
we move to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Ingalls, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we're adjourned.
Congratulations.